The negotiation chamber aboard the Vothan flagship Ascendant Grasp was built to intimidate. Its walls pulsed with bioluminescent veins of violet light, engineered to make lesser species feel small, temporary, insignificant. Ambassador Thal Korrek had used this room to break the will of 11 species before humanity ever left its solar system. He did not expect it to fail today. Across the obsidian table sat Colonel Ray Sutton, the sole human representative permitted aboard the ship. He wore no armor, carried no visible weapon, and had said almost nothing for the better part of 2 hours while Korrek outlined humanity's options: submit to Vothan tribute law, surrender 3 border colonies, and accept guided integration, a euphemism every enslaved species in the quadrant had learned to fear. Your species, Korrek said, his 4 eyes narrowing in what passed for amusement, has existed among the stars for less than a century. You have no fleet doctrine worth the name. No experience with void war. And yet you sit there as if you hold some leverage. Sutton finally looked up. His eyes were tired, but steady. We've had leverage since before you learned our species existed, he said. You just didn't ask the right questions. Korrek's mandibles clicked, the Vothan equivalent of a scoff. Then enlighten me, Colonel. What leverage does a species with 300 warships possess against an empire with 30,000? Sutton leaned back. You ever wonder why we stopped answering your scout probes 6 months ago? You were hiding, Korrek said. Regrouping. Building your pitiful defense grid. No, Sutton said quietly. We were listening. 3 years earlier, the first Vothan scout ship had entered the Sol system uninvited, cataloging Earth's defenses, its population centers, and its industrial capacity. Standard procedure before conquest, the same procedure that had worked flawlessly against the Athari, the Osman, and the Drev Concord. What the Vothan hadn't accounted for was Dr. Elena Marsh. A quiet astrophysicist working out of a converted missile silo in Nevada, Marsh had spent a decade before first contact studying a phenomenon she called gravitic bleed, faint ripples in spacetime caused by faster-than-light travel. Humanity's own FTL engines were crude, inefficient, and barely functional. But they were enough to prove her theory. Every time a ship jumped through folded space, it left a signature. A wound in the fabric of the universe that didn't heal for hours. And if you knew how to read those wounds, you could see exactly where a ship had been, and where it was going. The Vatan Empire, arrogant in its size, made no effort to hide its FTL signatures. Why would they? No species they'd ever conquered had the mathematics to track them. Humanity did. For 6 months, Marsh's team, quietly funded, quietly staffed, quietly ignored by a distracted UN more concerned with optics than substance, mapped every jump signature the Vothan fleet left across near space. Supply routes. Staging grounds. The location of forward depots the Empire assumed were secret. And one particular signature, repeating every 11 days, that led to a system called Thren Hollow. You've been planning something, Korrek said, and for the first time, something like uncertainty crept into his four-eyed stare. We've been finishing something, Sutton corrected. You made a mistake 3 years ago, Ambassador. You showed us your fleet before you tried to take our home. That's not a mistake predators usually make. Threats, Korrek said, do not become truths simply because they are spoken with confidence. I'm not threatening you, Sutton said. I'm informing you. There's a difference. A threat implies I want something from you. I don't. I'm here because the UN Security Council insisted on exhausting diplomacy before what comes next. I've done that. We're done. He stood. Thren Hollow, Sutton said, is where you keep the Aegis 9, your reserve dreadnought fleet. 400 ships. The ones you're saving in case a real war breaks out. The ones nobody outside your high command is supposed to know exist. Korrek's 4 eyes went very still. That location is classified beyond even ambassadorial clearance, he said, and for the first time, his voice had lost its languid confidence. We know, Sutton said. We've known each other for 14 months. We know your supply cycles. We know your jump corridors. We know which of your admirals sleeps in cryostasis during transit and which ones don't. We know because every single time one of your ships folds space, it screams into the universe like a wounded animal, and we've been listening to every scream since the day your scouts thought we were too primitive to notice. He walked to the chamber's viewport, where the curve of a nearby moon glowed pale against the dark. You came here today to offer us submission, Sutton continued. Free colonies. Tribute. Integration. You built this whole negotiation around the assumption that we're weak because we're young. But you never once asked why a species that only reached orbit 200 years ago has FTL drives, colony ships, and a fleet, all developed in a fraction of the time it took your empire. Why, Korrek said, the word barely a whisper now. Because we've been at war with ourselves for 10,000 years, Sutton said. Every empire we ever built, we tore down. Every weapon we ever made, we improved by killing each other with the last one. You didn't meet a young species, Ambassador. You met the only survivors of 10,000 years of humanity doing to itself exactly what you're threatening to do to us now. The silence in the chamber stretched long enough that the bioluminescent walls seemed to dim in sympathy. You're bluffing, Korrek finally said. Even if you found Thren hollow, even if every word is true, you do not have the fleet to challenge 400 dreadnoughts. You're right, Sutton said. We don't. He tapped a small device on his wrist. A holographic display bloomed above the table, not a fleet formation, not a battle plan, but a star map. 14 points of light, scattered across Vothan-controlled space, each one blinking in perfect synchronization. We don't need a fleet, Sutton said. We need 14 cargo haulers, civilian registry, currently docked at 14 of your supply depots, including Thren Hollow, because your empire's economy runs on Ithari and Osman slave labor, and slave labor needs someone hauling the freight. Korrek's mandibles parted, but no sound came out. Every one of those haulers, Sutton continued, has been quietly retrofitted over the last 8 months. Graviton disruptors. Enough yield to collapse a jump corridor and take out anything docked within it. We didn't build a war fleet, Ambassador. We built 14 bombs and gave them each a shipping manifest. You would slaughter thousands of your own allies' laborers too. Every hauler crew is human, Sutton said flatly. Volunteers. Every one of them knew exactly what they signed up for. Because that's the other thing you never understood about us. You keep looking for our weapons. Our fleets. Our numbers. You should have been looking for what we're willing to do. He closed the display. Right now, 14 ships are sitting in 14 of your most valuable locations, waiting for a single signal. That signal only gets sent if I don't walk off this ship in the next 10 minutes. You wanted a war, Ambassador. Fine. We'll give you one. But understand, this isn't the opening move. It's the only move. There's no negotiating after this point, no surrender terms, no second offer. You wanted war. Sutton turned toward the chamber doors, which hissed open at his approach. Then you've chosen death. 9 minutes and 40 seconds later, Ambassador Thal Korrek transmitted a full withdrawal order to every Vothan vessel within human-claimed space, along with a formal request, the first in Gotham history, for a permanent non-aggression treaty. The 14 haulers never fired a shot. They didn't need to. Colonel Ray Sutton walked off the Ascendant Grasp into the cold light of a nearby star, and somewhere in Nevada, Dr. Elena Marsh watched 14 blinking lights go dark on her monitor, stood down, not detonated, and finally allowed herself to breathe. Humanity hadn't won the war. They'd simply made certain it would never begin.